Under 17, not admitted without parent.
Remember, you can only die once in...
Hello, and welcome to the Video Psychosis podcast. This is your host, Strong Knotz. Here with me today, a special guest. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Justin.
That was Justin. This is episode 4 of Video Psychosis. On the last show, we had Will Vargas on. We talked about a few different things. Toby Hooper, Doris Wishman, Something Weird. Really good episode. Check it out if you haven't. It's available on YouTube, SoundCloud, Facebook. All of the episodes are. Definitely check out our Facebook page where we post movie reviews almost every day. Movie news, lots of other stuff. Rest in peace, Agnes Varda. Shout out real quick to her. Today's show is going to be pretty interesting. My guest Justin is going to be helping me put on a local community screening of the 1981 Hungarian animated film Feherlofia, Son of the White Mare. For any of you who don't know about that movie, it's really obscure kind of psychedelic film, maybe in the same vein as stuff like Allegro Non Troppo or Fantasia, Yellow Submarine, Fantastic Planet. If you're looking for some eye candy, kind of like a head trip, definitely one of those kind of films, plays around with mythology. We're going to be playing it for free in Olympia at the Meeting House, so check out Video Psychosis on Facebook for info on that. And talking of screenings, Justin is going to be helping me with that. He actually has some experience with that, and that's actually how we met up. So go ahead and give us a little bit of your history with that.
So yeah, we met at a used to be local bar here, Obsidian, where myself and my then girlfriend picked up doing film screenings at the local venue under the name Hotel Broslin, which originated in Denton, Texas. So yeah, that's how we met.
And Hotel Broslin is, of course, what movie? Is that from?
From Basket Case.
Basket Case.
Yeah, and we happen to be both wearing our Basket Case themed shirts.
That's right, and we talked about Basket Case on the last episode of the pod. So there's some synchronicity here.
Yeah, I don't know, something's in the air. Funnily enough, I actually just found when I was digging through this stuff that I have in storage, my ex-partner Mara that helped out with the screening, she got me and her and my buddy who also helped with the screenings a Belial pin, and it was done really well. It's like engraved and everything, but it says what's in the box on the thing, not what's in the basket.
Yeah.
And like none of us noticed for like a couple weeks until like somebody pointed it out when we were wearing it, and just like, holy shit, did they do that on purpose? And,
definitely. Brad Pitt made that pin.
Yeah, I don't know. Got their movies confused, but
what's in the fucking basket?
Yeah.
So you said you did the original screenings in Denton, Texas?
Yeah, it originated actually from the aforementioned people, Mar and Brandon, that were involved with the group. We all went to Philip H. Anselmo's Housecore Horror Movie Festival in Austin, Texas, which we went to the inaugural year, and man, I think it was back in 2013, and was just a showcase of a lot of great like punk and metal bands, and then they had film screenings all weekend. It was like a 3-day festival, and
nice.
Got to see Goblin play there. They did they did 2 sets. One was like their just like best of kind of like mix, and then they closed out the festival where they did a live scoring of Suspiria, and it was just it was so magical. Like they got Jorg Butgerite out there and screened all of his films, and he did like a Q&A and an introduction to his films. Jim Van Bever was there, and they screened his films. He got ejected from the festival one day because he was drunk and disorderly, but no, yeah, it was just amazing. I got to see like so many great films there, and coming back to Denton after that was just like I was on this high of just seeing like all these like fucking great films that don't get a whole lot of public light of day, and was lamenting to a friend at a bar how like why doesn't Denton have this, because like Denton's kind of a culturally rich music and arts town in Texas, and I was just like, this is kind of bogus, like why don't we have something like that going on? And my friend was just like, well, it's because you're not doing it. And it was like that kind of hit me. It's just like, yeah, you know, like I'm sitting here complaining that somebody else isn't doing it, so why don't I just fucking do it?
That was the inspiration.
Yeah, totally. And so we teamed up with, it was myself, Mara, and Brandon, and then we hit up our friend Jonah who is also just like a movie aficionado, got him involved, and we cobbled together this film screening group.
Right on. And that was the beginning of Hotel Broslin, was inspired by that Anselmo, that film showing, basically.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I've gone to like previous like film screenings, of course, like before that, but that one in particular was just like just an overload of having a good time going and seeing like these films. And there was bars and drinks being served and stuff, and it was just like everybody was in a great mood and just cheering on the films, and it was just like a really good experience. And we brought whatever we could, that sort of energy, hoping to get people
similar approach there.
Totally.
Yeah, because that kind of atmosphere is usually what kind of makes those screenings. It's not always, just about seeing the movie. It's like you show up and there's like a sort of communal vibe, and usually people are on the same wavelength, or they're seeing something new, so they're a little more adventurous.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that was, I think, one of the things that we wanted to cultivate and accomplish, is not only giving a venue to films that people like love and know and are fans about, but just getting people out to see films they wouldn't otherwise see. They might not have access to, or are plugged into that culture. But
it's like it's sort of like maybe like a little bit of the alternative, or maybe in a sense like maybe not necessarily underground, but you're not going to see movies like Necromantic or Der Todesking at the AMC.
Yeah.
So any kind of venue you can find that's maybe brave enough to play that kind of stuff and say, whether anybody comes out or not, it's here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I've been to, there was a bar in Fort Worth, Texas, that would show, I like this a lot, but they would show films and correspond special drinks like to that film. They did like Fear and Loathing Las Vegas, and I think those are like mezcal drinks. And then then they did like Team America, and they had, I don't even know where the hell they got these, but they had cans of beer that were just American flags on the on the can. And those are like more mainstream films, but it was still just like a really good time, and kind of had that, they provided that little extra that could kind of get you into the mood and the spirit of sitting and just watching a film.
It's like the spirit of showmanship, like like we've talked about on the show before, William Castle and stuff, where it's, you don't even necessarily have like a gimmick. It's also just like a little extra, something to gets you in the seat, keeps you in the seat, makes a memorable night.
Totally, absolutely. They've stuck around in my memory as well. Yeah, so during like the inception of our discussions about how we wanted to present this, like we had to come up with the name, or we wanted to come up with a name, because there was a Dallas movie theater. I don't know if they're still doing it. They were at some point, and Jonah had helped out with it. That's kind of like one of the reasons we recruited him. But it's like Tuesday Night Trash was like the name of their little like screening night, and we had a hard time coming up with the name. And one of them that I wish that it was my favorite, we all kind of had talked about, because at the time all the Blockbusters were closing, and there was one still left in Denton. It was on the verge of closing, and Blockbuster originated in Dallas, Texas. And it wouldn't have been a good name because I could never remember how to pronounce it correctly. But we just had this joke of, instead of calling it Blockbuster, we'd call it Bluckbuster, and just have the exact same logo, but just invert the colors.
Yeah.
And
the blue and the yellow there.
Exactly. Yeah. But there was, I don't know if it was just, this was brought up just to kind of, nobody else loved it as much as I did, because I thought that was a fucking genius idea that we all came up with. But they're like, that might cause too much attention. Like, someone may, and like,
Blockbuster's gonna run us out of town on wagons.
They were fucking closing. So, but
yeah, and I don't know about you. This is like, is it just me, or is it like every like half a year or every year or something? You'll be online, and it's like there's one blockbuster left in America.
Yeah,
there's always like one Blockbuster left. Like, how many are actually left? Is it just one?
I think it's true now. I think that is literally true. I think there's one or two, but I believe there's only one left, and I think it's in Alaska, if I'm not mistaken. Which, I don't know. It's weird, because I hear how that one survives. It's just like, the internet reception is not great. Up in those parts, and so people actually still go and rent films because they can't easily access Netflix, Hulu, YouTube, all that. But it would be interested to find out if there are like other video stores in that area, that still rent out. But yeah, I think there's still one left.
So you did this in Denton, Texas for a while, and it was a group effort there. Where did you hold a lot of these screenings at? Was it like venues you booked, or in like bars, or what kind of places were you playing the movies at?
We really only played the films in 2 places. It was more just one place. We had one film screening, I believe, at a pizza place called J&J's. They had like a basement where really cool setup, but bands usually played there. And it was the only screening that I didn't attend because I forgot what was going on. I was like playing a show with a band or something like that at the time. The mainstay was Rubber Gloves, which is no longer around, unfortunately, but they housed us up there. And it was really interesting because the owner, Josh, was really enthusiastic about the project and wanted us to settle in, but he was also kind of worried about the legality issue of us screening like other people's material, and you know, we weren't charging for the screenings and like that, but there was still just, you know, he didn't know what potential trouble himself or the club might get into. And he had this long drawn out battle with ASCAP, I guess the agency that makes sure that, you know, people get paid their royalties if you're using their music. The club would not allow any bands to play any covers because Josh hated ASCAP, and so like I guess if you have bands that are playing covers, then you get into that weird murky territory. And so he was somewhat on their radar. I don't know if he had gotten fined from them before or something.
Strange, yeah.
Yeah, so he was very kind of like worried about that, and that actually like our first screening, the way that we could actually kind of get him to relax about that was that we were only going to do public domain films. And so we were researching and trying to find, you know, what was out there that would be worth showing that was in the public domain sphere. And our first, I think it was the inaugural screening that we did was Pieces and Undertaker and His Pals. Yeah. We did double feature. We learned something from that though. We had a crazy good turnout. I mean, for it being our first show and our first showing, and it was a Wednesday night, I think there was about 30 people that showed up, which was which was great for that small little club. But after we did Undertaker and His Pals first, and then Pieces was like the main event, and people were really enjoying it, but then after they watched one film, they were kind of done for the night, you know,
sort of like petering out there for the second film.
Totally, which was like a bummer because Pieces was like, you know, I love Undertaker and His Pals, but Pieces, you know, kind of the money shot definitely of those two, and there were, you know, it cut down to more than half that crowd size by the time Pieces was playing.
It's like the old double bill aesthetic, you know. The first film is, you know, maybe the one you pay for. The second one is you stick around. You come in for the first film as maybe a sort of interest off the street or something, you stick around, and then the second film is usually like the pure entertainment value. And Pieces is a movie that plays really well with crowds, so that is a shame that people might not stick around to catch. I mean, truly one of the most absurd movies ever made. And that's just a movie that's guaranteed to get a good crowd reaction, you know, because you've got like kung fu teachers and,
out of nowhere,
and you know, very sweaty Dom DeLuise-esque gardeners and stuff like that. And it's the director of Pod People.
Oh, really?
I'm fairly certain. Yeah, I think he also made Slugs.
Oh,
or Slugs the movie. Excuse me. The full title.
There's okay. I don't know if there's 2 versions, Slugs and then Slugs the movie.
Well, you know, most people just call it Slugs.
But it's
Slugs the movie. Because you have to differentiate between the animal and the movie. This is
it's not a nature film that
right.
you're watching. Yeah, no, and maybe we kind of failed there in that way of like we could have shown Pieces first, and then, you know, maybe people would stick around for Undertaker and His Pals because that was definitely Undertaker and His Pals was like the lesser known, I would suppose, out of those two.
Definitely, yeah, the more obscure of those two, I would say.
Yeah, so they may have been energized to stay, but again, I think it's just it was a stamina thing. You know, it's a college town. You know, people have to go to school and go to their job the next day, and it was a Wednesday night, so we definitely learned that doing a double bill just like kind of didn't work for us, especially the time slot that we had and the town and what have you. And we also, right from the start, Jonah had this idea, I believe, of like showing shorts prior to the film, which we stuck with for the entire run of doing Hotel Broslin, which was like great because it just gives something for the people who come in on time, and we were able to showcase great short films that were interesting or funny. But then, you know, like anything, you know, runs on punk time whenever you're doing some sort of public event, and so people would come in later than what was advertised the film was going to start, and so you'd get the early birds that would get to watch that, and then you'd get more people coming in as the film was ready to start.
And it's also cool to show like those short films and stuff before the movie, because a lot of the time, from one of the screenings that I went to of yours, I know you played possibly in Michigan before Frankenhooker, I think it was, and I was really impressed with that, because I remember my friend who took me out, our mutual friend Sweetleaf Segundo, we went out to see that, and I just kind of expected, I didn't even really know that we were going to like a local place downtown. I didn't know where we were going, to a movie theater or what, and to go in that little back room and just pull up a seat, and it's already kind of like you have like a musky vibe in this sort of like dark room, and you're just like, all right, what are we getting into? And then to put on like possibly in Michigan, Cecilia kind of, which has become sort of, I don't know if you know this, there's almost like a meme of that now. People love that song, the bite at the hand that feeds me. That's like a YouTube meme or something now. I have no idea. It moves so fast.
That's surprising and not surprising, because I think that she definitely deserves more attention, and that song is fucking great. Like, it's it should get good recognition. It's just,
that song is better than all the music in Liquid Sky. All of it.
I don't know, that short film is wonderful, and Brandon found that. He went like deep digging for like some shorts and discovered her, and I think Jonah was well aware of her work prior to that, but it's such a bizarre but like in every good possible way film, and the music just complements it beautifully.
It's something to like pique people's interest so that you kind of perk them up before the movie. And it's interesting to show those kind of like esoteric things also, because it fits in the vein with the films you program, where I mean, come on, where are you going to see possibly in Michigan outside of like YouTube? So to like maybe play these kind of smaller things or stuff that you may not have heard of and then just randomly stumble on YouTube. Part of the reason I was like impressed with seeing that short film before Frankenhooker when you played that was because I had a kind of similar visual aesthetic kind of going on when we were doing our house shows here at the house, because we would have bands playing at the house, and I would want visuals on the TV kind of to the side of the band or behind the band, something that maybe like for the people who aren't comfortable with eye level looking at the band or just looking around people in a room, you have something on the TV weird to look at. So the idea was to always grab eye-popping kind of visual things that would perk people up. So yeah, a lot of that stuff is just really fantastic.
Yeah, and it gets, I don't know, this goes back to just like the power of curation, and what I really like about that is, like you guys did with your house venue, we also ran one in Denton, Texas, and we'd do something similar, because where people could see the bands, limited space, but then there was a side room that had a TV, and we would put stuff on in that as well. But like, you're creating an experience for people, and if you can introduce them to new and interesting things they wouldn't see otherwise, it just kind of keeps that thread going. And here we are today. There's a meme on Cecilia Condit's
of all people
short films, so strange, people are spreading it around, which is good.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's the ideal thing. That's what you want. Even if one interesting thing about putting on these kind of screenings is, even if you don't get the attendance maybe that you would desire, or if you're not like have like a packed out crowd, you will have the people that say, what was that? And they like go home and look it up. And since that screening, which was about, I think that was like February 2017, so that was a little over 2 years ago, I've gone back and watched that short film a couple times, and it's like, so it's lingered in my memory. And so these things definitely, even if you don't get a lot of people, they stick with the people that do see it.
For sure.
And it's always cool to turn people onto these things. That's like the whole point of this podcast, and of the screenings that we like to have. So you were doing this Hotel Broslin in Denton, Texas, and you talked a little bit about the venues. What kind of films were you playing in Denton? Yeah,
we mainly stuck to the horror genre and underground. Just, I don't know, we were trying to definitely just cultivate like a more underground feel. We showed some like more popular movies whenever we would kind of throw them in there whenever the crowd might start waning, where if we could just throw something out there that people know and generate interest, like we did that with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is, everybody knows that, and that drew out a lot of people. And it kind of just, we tried to be a little strategic with that, so then we could really promote the evenings that we were having and get people interested and get them back. But yeah, we ended up screening Even Hitler Had a Girlfriend, which was a Jonah Lang's selection. And that was another thing we did too, is we definitely wanted to get everybody in the group to kind of curate some films like that they really wanted to showcase. It wasn't, we did try to keep it democratic and not just one-sided. Usually somebody came with a film, then there wouldn't be like really much objection because we trusted everybody.
The judgment was pretty similar on everybody's behalves.
Absolutely. So like, with that film, like nobody in our group had heard of it, and he swore by it. So we were like, yeah, fuck yeah, let's screen this. And it is such a bizarre comedy. It's a weird comedy tragedy. I don't know how you describe it, but it's just so uneven, but in the best possible way.
And this is Even Hitler Had a Girlfriend?
Yeah, it was that film with an amazing name, but it's just like this schlub who just decides to spend all his money on hookers, and it's bizarre. You would just have to see it to even grasp what it's about and how the charm that it has, because it has its own charm that I haven't seen in any other sort of like film, especially not like a comedy. It's like an independent underground comedy, which many of those out there, but
it's not like some little $2 slice of life. This is my little indie movie. It's just like some genuine sort of oddball kind of effort.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like a High Strung or, something like that maybe.
Yeah, it's its own beast. I highly recommend it because it is something that'll just leave you bewildered and but very, very entertained. But we did that. We did Riki-Oh, the story of Riki.
Classic.
I don't even know. You can't really call it a horror film, but it has like more blood and guts and special effects than most horror films. Yeah, for sure. But it's like definitely a kung fu-esque film. I don't even know what category you'd put that film in.
It's like somebody watched The Street Fighter and was like, take out all that stuff where he's not cracking people's skulls.
Yeah.
It's boring when he's talking to Ratnose. He should be like punching through people's stomachs a lot more.
For sure, but it does, it doesn't disappoint. And that was one where, I don't know, it was great to see where we would put those films out there and advertise them like online, like we had like a Facebook page, and you'd get people like that were really stoked to see it, really stoked to see that like projected. And introduced us to also people in the scene that like a lot of times we would see like maybe at shows and stuff, but we didn't know they necessarily had like a love for film or like knew these other type of movies. And I don't know, just like grew a connection with more people. We had like several people that were just like there for every single screening. And sometimes it would only be that like handful of like 4 or 5 people, but they kind of started getting to the point where it's like they know that they're going to come there and either see something they love or like
something they're going to talk about.
Totally. Yeah. They knew they weren't going to be disappointed. Not toting our own thing because we were showcasing other people's works, but it definitely was something they know that on a Wednesday night they can go and see something interesting, fun, gross, whatever it was that we were going to
something that's hard to find and with other people. Yeah.
No,
which is always exciting.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I hope other people made connections there as well, because like that's sort of the nice benefit of doing a public event, be it music or screening film or whatever, is that you get, say, like-minded people, but just people that are there for the same reason, to see something interesting or provocative or weird,
or something new,
something they haven't seen before.
That's always exciting, I think, or maybe one of the most exciting is the people who haven't seen it, because if you can hook them, then the opportunity of like coming back and being like, what am I going to get thrown into next week or next month, or what is going to be this wild thing that they have coming soon.
No, totally. I mean, that's like where, I met you. I mean, that's, it was a thing that brought people together. I actually like met a lot of people in Olympia through doing those like screenings. So, we're done in Obsidian. So, yeah.
So you said Jonah was the one who chose Even Hitler Had a Girlfriend, and that was for one of the Denton screenings, right?
Yeah.
What was one of your choices for something that maybe got screened down there?
So I definitely, the Undertaker and His Pals was definitely one that I wanted to put on. It was a film that I feel like not a lot of people knew, but I thought was like really fun, definitely in like the Herschel Gordon Lewis sort of vein that I just loved since I was a kid. It was with Frankenhooker, if I remember correctly, with us screening the short films before. We showed Frankenhooker, which we showed Frankenhooker down there and up here. We double dipped on that one, but we were like, fuck it, it's a new town. Who will know?
They won't know.
They won't know.
It's worth it. It's great.
If I get someone from Denton heckling me in Olympia that we show the same film, then I would take that. That would be worth it. Yeah, it'd be worth it.
At least they're back.
At least, yeah. Like I would be so flattered. But when we did it down in Denton, which Frankenhooker, if people don't already know, listening to this podcast, it's a ridiculously fun romp of a movie. It's absurd to the nth degree. Hen and Lauder fodder if people have seen Basket Case and Brain Damage. But at any rate, we did it for Valentine's Day, and so I was so passionate about showing Douglas Buck's Cutting Moments. Which is it's a heartbreaking short film that is unbelievably violent and gory and just like unflinchingly so.
Very provocative, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it was one of the few films that I've had this with where I didn't even realize it, but I was like covering my mouth like while I was watching, like my hand just automatically went up to my mouth. I was just like shocked by it. But I still think it's like actually like a really beautiful film of this like really dysfunctional, fucked up couple. And so I was like, this is perfect for Valentine's Day, right? Like, you know, this is
it's thematic. It makes total sense.
It made sense on paper, but in practice did not go over so well. And what was funny, when this is like a testament to the group being supportive of each other, when I came to them with this film saying like I want to show this as a short, like everybody was just like, yeah, I don't know about that, Justin. Like it's pretty intense. And I was like, no, it'll be great, you know, like I want to introduce people to this film. I think they'll love it and respond to it. And it just sucked the air out of the room completely. After the film, usually when we've like shown shorts, they were always usually more lighthearted or weird, or just, you know, didn't really evoke much emotion other than just, you know, laughter, bewilderment, or joy, or, you know, whatever. This one is just a gut-wrenching, and as soon as it was over, usually with the other shorts, people would like clap and, you know, laugh and like have a good time. It was just icy silence. It just
dead silence.
Oh my god. and then we're like, okay, now for Frankenhooker, this like ridiculous horror comedy film.
His wife gets a lawnmower.
Yeah. Which, you know, everybody stuck around, and, you know, they rallied, and, you know, they were there for Frankenhooker.
So they were able to work through the pain of Cutting Moments, and so they were into Frankenhooker. They were like laughing and hitting the beats and stuff.
Totally. I think it took a little bit. You know, we would always do breaks between the. Oh, actually, I take that back. We wouldn't do breaks between the shorts. It would go straight into it. So I think it took a little bit to warm them back up, because I mean, it's like Cutting Moments is a fucking gut punch, and like that was something I definitely learned. I was just like, okay, yeah, you got to have brevity in the pre-screening part of the showcase. So,
well, I don't know. I put my hat off to you on that one. I think that's a great choice. If I was in that crowd, I would have been the one person clapping.
Yeah, but you also thought Sinful Dwarf was a great choice,
well, I didn't say it was a great choice. We talked about this. Me and Will talked about this a little bit on the last podcast. I didn't think programming the Sinful Dwarf was a great choice for All Freaking Night, but I thought it was at least I very much appreciated the idea of, I don't know, I like movies that provoke people and kind of pick at them, and maybe I think it's good to be uncomfortable. There's few things that are as entertaining as like kind of looking at a crowd from the back of the theater, and you see everybody kind of like uncomfortably lift their leg at the same time. They're all just kind of like, they like shift shuffling in their seat, around, just kind of like this, And the Sinful Dwarf, I mean, it's a terrible movie, which we said on the last podcast. Nobody is plugging this movie. It's terrible. But I mean, just to have the guts to show something that potentially people will like be totally aghast by. Like, you always take a risk when you go out there and program these films on the idea that, well, maybe people will have a good time, or this will be memorable for sure. Mm-hmm. The idea isn't always to go out and be like, oh, that was so much fun. Like, like it almost seems like a sort of maybe like a sadistic thing to program something that would just like stab people, and then it's like, all right, you'll heal up before the next movie.
Yeah, Yeah, walk it off.
But, you know, in the case of, I think, cutting moments, that is, playing that thematically, like I said, on Valentine's Day, I think is, you know, hilarious. And it's not really like, it's really like kind of poetically shot, and there's like the really great sort of ambient music. Mm-hmm. Very naturalistic performances. But, yeah, no, I mean, it is a good thing to show these things that people haven't heard of because, I don't know, it makes the experience worthwhile. So I like the idea of kind of maybe pushing people a little bit and then tethering them back in. I think that's a really good thing for screenings because it just makes the experience that much more memorable. Like, if you just come out and you saw a funny movie or like Frankenhooker, you'd be like, oh, that was funny. But like putting a short film like Cutting Moments, or possibly in Michigan before, it's like, what was up? What was the deal with the program, or what's behind that?
Yeah. Because
it makes you want to reach out. It's like when you go on YouTube and people have these playlists of stuff they just like. You wonder like, how do they run these things together? And it's fun to kind of like peer into the thinking behind that, I think.
No, for sure. And you know, my thing with me is like I had already seen like Cutting Moments before, several times before screening it. So like I had that time to get over the shock of that it presents, and like actually fell in love with the film. And you know, everybody seeing it for that first time just got the shock of it, you know.
Yeah.
I'm sure some people may have walked away like enjoying it, but I agree with what you said, because it's kind of one of those things where it's getting harder and harder to get shocked or moved by film, like moved in a way where it evokes like an emotion or response, like. And so I mean, I hope, like, my God, like that I would be so pleased with this project if somebody out there that saw Cutting Moments is still talking about like, I don't know the name of this movie, but it's a fucked up film that I saw on Valentine's Day and it like really fucked with me, you know. It's just one of those things that
it changed my life. I cut my dick off.
Yeah.
Spoilers. Not to cut in there, but I do think... Oh, is that another pun? But not to cut in there, but I do think that it is... Another reason it's great to program that kind of stuff is, like, you're playing to a niche anyway. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying you want to, like, push people out, but the people who just aren't going to want to like it or aren't going to be into it should probably know right up front what they're in for.
Yeah.
So, like... If you can stick around through something like Cutting Moments, then you're probably a little more on the edge and you're more accepting of these kind of things. And then to go into a total comedy is a nice like 180 because you get the total opposite end of the spectrum there. So it's worth the effort. You stick it out, you get pushed a little bit, and then it pays off, and it almost makes like maybe the humor of a film like Frankenhooker even funnier.
Yeah, you know, maybe I never really thought about it like that, but that's, you know, that the humor may have shown through a little bit more in Frankenhooker because people may have wanted to feel anything other than what they were feeling after watching Cutting Moments.
Yeah.
But, you know, and we were never like this aggressive or alienating, but it's, you know, could be viewed as somewhat the equivalent of, what was it, fucking the band Mayhem would throw like pig heads into the audience, and the people that stuck around were like the true fans, like, you know, over there. So, you know, if you can sit through Cutting Moments, then, you know, you can hang with Hotel Broslin, I guess.
You don't really, for these kind of things, you know, maybe if you go to your average, like your mall theater, or, you know, whatever mainstream cinemas around you, and you go see a movie, there's not really a lot of like kind of, there's audience interaction, but you don't get it to this extent where it's kind of good to push somebody to the point where they might get so mad they might yell at the film or be like, what is this? Like, it's I think it's almost good in a way, because it's like, if you can't handle it, you probably shouldn't be there. So for it to just kind of provoke you in that way is to say, like, if you're not part of the crowd, you know.
Yeah.
Like, pretty quick. And it almost kind of gives it an exclusivity. It's like, it's maybe like how audiences felt like when Pink Flamingos came out and they got through the movie and they saw everybody else in the theater at the end. They're like, well, we made it through. It's like a battalion or something.
Yeah, you know? Yeah. It's a shared experience that you're just like, you know, we all survived. And, you know.
You played Frankenhooker twice, because you played that in Texas and here in Washington. And some of the other films, lots of horror stuff you played. There was Slime City, 976 Evil, Society. Are there any others particularly you'd like to talk about?
Well, the Slime City screening actually was like a part of, it was during the Texas summer, which can get pretty brutal. I want to say maybe we did it in August. which is like the hottest month usually in Texas, and we wanted to do, it was like, what do we bill it as, like the summer of melt or something, and we ended up doing, I guess, 3 screenings that month. We used to just do it once a month, and that was when we went to a second venue because Rubber Gloves couldn't host us that many nights. They gave us 2 weeks out of the month, and we did Slime City, Body Melt, and The Devil's Rain. Nice. Devil's Rain being the one that I missed out on, but yeah, we try to have a little bit more, like, some themes to it, like that was like a little like series run that we did of melt movies, which are just goopy and great practical effects,
like Street Trash and The Incredible Melting Man, stuff like that.
I think Street Trash, actually, I take that back. I think it was a full month. I think we did 4 screenings, and Street Trash was a part of that, actually.
Nice.
That memory comes back. But yeah, doing into that genre. But then we had also tried to incorporate more of a, I guess, I wouldn't say engaged experience with people. Like we had usually like a little playbill kind of for every film that we showed, would have information on the film, be it background stuff, or like a little mini poster insert that people would get when they would come in, and advertising usually for the next film. We showed popcorn for one of the screenings, in which we actually like served popcorn to people and cut out like little logos like from Xerox copied from the fucking VHS copy that we had, and plastered them onto the popcorn, and people were talking about saving the little boxes and stuff that they had with it. And Society, when we screened Society, that was one of Brandon's picks, and he really wanted to do it up, and it was really good. Like, he got cheap tablecloths from the dollar store and put like tablecloths on all the tables. And for people who don't know, like, Society is about like high society and the seedy underbelly, but that goes on in that society. And so he did it up like really nice. Like, I think every table had like maybe a candle, I'm not sure, but they definitely had like these champagne flutes that he filled with fake blood like on all the tables. And
was there a post-screening shunting? Because that's what you stay for.
That's what you stay for. No, there wasn't, unfortunately, but in the Texas heat, there definitely could have been, for sure. It gets sticky down there. But one of my favorites, though, may lie a little bit more on the mainstream side, but Return of the Living Dead, which I always wanted to screen when we were in Denton, but I think it was like kind of viewed as like too on the nose, or I'm not sure, but like I just fucking love that film. But 976 Evil was another screening that, it was actually the first screening we did in Olympia that I just like personally have just loved. Like, I used to see that movie on TV all the time, and like and had like a recording like on VHS like from the TV, like edited like crazy. I just always loved that film, and we had a really good turnout for that one being the first screening here. And it's just, I don't know, I think it's a really underrated film. It got like raked over the coals.
I admittedly have not seen the film.
Oh, it's good.
It's on the list. I need to watch it soon, but it couldn't be that bad. It's got a sequel. 976 Evil 2.
Yeah, no, what is that one had like a subtitle to it. It was The Astral Factor, which I don't know what the fuck that's supposed to. Yeah, I don't even know what the fuck that's supposed to mean.
What is that? I've never. That's so crazy.
No.
That's like some fucking noise band shit or something. What's up,
man, guys?
We're the Astral Factor.
The Astral Factor.
Pick up your phone.
Well, that would be a great band name in and of itself. 976 Evil 2, The Astral Factor. The entire name of the band. But
Tyler Perry's 976 Evil 2, The Astral Factor.
Oh, man. Copyright that immediately.
Nobody steal this from us. It's ours. So we've talked a little bit about your experience with putting on the Hotel Broslin screenings and how we're collaborating on this one that's coming up here in July. In addition to that, I thought it might be interesting. Everybody always likes to talk in film communities about like memorable film events or kind of experiences they've had at the theater, and I certainly love to tell those stories too, so I thought this might be an interesting opportunity to kind of segue into that. We're going to talk about, honestly, just some of our favorite movie memories, because like we mentioned earlier, seeing the movie is one thing, but it's like the atmosphere and the experience that's really interesting. And a lot of the time I've seen movies that maybe weren't so great in the theater, but that I'll never forget just because of like something that happened, and a lot of the time that's happened at great movies and stuff like that. So we're going to dive into that a little bit. Now, we've all spent some time in Texas. I actually grew up in Lampasas. I'm from Texas.
I don't think I knew that.
No, I didn't tell you that before.
I don't. I just saw you as a Georgian.
A Georgian. Yes, a Maroderian. I spent some time in Georgia. I think the first probably about 9 or 10 years of my life I lived in Texas from 1992 until about like 2001, 2002. Because I remember when we moved to Georgia, I think it was like 2002, 2003. I know I had to have been in Georgia in 2003 because we had TV and we first got cable. And I remember seeing like commercials for like House of a Thousand Corpses on like right after we got cable. So I know it was around then that I moved. But yeah, so I grew up in Texas and you spent some time there. Were you born there or?
Yeah, born and raised.
Right on. It's interesting. You talked about how Denton has kind of a pretty cool art scene. I guess that's like not too far off from Austin or where's the original Alamo Draft House at? That's
Austin. Yeah. We're about 3 hours north of Austin.
I was never really, I guess, so like into movies that I paid attention to them. It was always just, I think when I was younger, kind of like background noise. I remember one of the first movies I ever remember seeing in the theater was Spawn, when the Spawn movie came out with John Leguizamo and Michael Jai White. I think Martin Sheen.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Oh man, far from Apocalypse Now at this point.
A very dyed beard, Martin Sheen. Yeah.
He's like a bad politician, right? Something like that. Betraying you, Al. But I remember
dripping with villainy.
I remember when that movie came out. I think there was like some like kind of outrage over the fact that it was like a dark comic book, and this was like before the big like advent of comic book movies, which kind of sprang into shape like in the like sort of mid 2000s, I would say, or early to mid 2000s is when that started getting pretty big. Spawn was, I think, kind of controversial then, and it ended up, I think it was a PG-13 version they put in theaters with the idea to like attract families and stuff to this movie, and then I think like on DVD they put out the R-rated version or whatever.
That sounds about right.
But I do remember going to see Spawn in Texas when I was younger, and it was at the Dollar Theater. I have a lot of like nostalgia for those places. I don't ever see those places anymore. I haven't found one up here. Do you remember like Dollar Theaters?
Oh, absolutely. Denton had one in its shitty little mall. I think there's one up here in Tacoma, if I'm not mistaken. It's like a $3 theater or whatever. But
I remember back in the day when a Dollar Theater was $1, not $3.
Yeah,
it's
not
the $3
theater.
That's right.
The highfalutin $3 theater.
No, I would like to see that. But I remember also at that theater, and this is a more vivid memory to me. I remember I went with my dad to see Scooby Doo. Like, once again, not like a great movie or anything, but talking about memorable, like one of my first cinematic experiences probably. But I will never forget two things about going to see Scooby Doo at the Dollar Theater in Texas when I was a kid is that, like, number one, I'm pretty sure it was at Scooby Doo. It might have been at Spawn, but I'm pretty sure it was at Scooby Doo because I think it's around that same time, like 99, 2000. I remember going out of the movie to use the bathroom and like they were playing the South Park movie there. And I was younger. This was before we had cable. So like South Park was just something I heard about from other kids. With those Dollar Theaters, like nobody is like on guard. It's like the drive-in. You don't have like security or anything like that. So I just walked right into the South Park movie and just kind of watched that for like maybe like a minute or 2 minutes and like totally forgot that I was even going to the bathroom and just like skipped out on going to the bathroom, just watched some of the South Park movie and came back to Scooby Doo. I'm pretty sure it was Scooby Doo, but I'll never forget that. And then specifically at the Scooby Doo screening at some point during the movie, because this was back when they were still playing films on film in the theater. This was before digital and everything, which is so strange to think the early 2000s even. But they're playing Scooby Doo and like the fucking something went totally awry with the reel and like the top half shifted to the bottom and the bottom was on top and Scooby Doo was all like fucking enveloped in half, like awkward opposite halves, and so it kept playing like this, like nothing was wrong. And all these people and their families in the dollar theater was like, what is this? And you just people getting up and getting out, and you see people kind of standing up and turning around and yelling at the like projection booth. And I was a kid, so I was like, this is kind of great. I kind of like seeing the movie like this. This is more interesting, because even like being kind of younger in that age, I was a little bit not so really like interested in the kiddie fare, because I was always a horror fan, which I've talked about on the show before. I liked horror since I was a kid, but you know, yeah, Scooby Doo like Upside Down was way more interesting.
I just picture some bored projectionist feeling the exact same way of having to screen this film night after night, and just decided to fuck with it for their own mental health.
You don't really get the full effect of Matthew Lillard's performance as Shaggy until you've seen his head below his pants. But yeah, that's one that sticks out in my mind as being very early memory of being in the movie theater, as far back as I can recall anyway, and specifically in Texas. So do you have anything that relates into that?
Yeah, I mean, I have several Texas screenings that I went to. I'm curious though, if I can take a quick pause. Have you gone back and rewatched Spawn since then?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
I haven't.
Have you made it all the way through Spawn?
No, I haven't actually watched it.
We really had some good theaters, still have some good theaters in Texas. The main one, in my opinion, being the Texas Theater that's in Dallas, and it's actually famed because that's the theater that Lee Harvey Oswald got arrested at, and it's still there. It's protected as a historical landmark, and nice. They are doing amazing things at that theater. Like, I saw The Strange Color of Your Body's Tears there. They do a lot of screenings like that we've been talking about, but they have bands play behind the screen, usually after films that they show on the weekends, which is just great. And you get to see kind of the infrastructure of the theater, and yeah, it's a great community. They're really doing something special there. But one of my favorite screenings that I went to, I don't even remember the year, but it was done at the Inwood Theater that's also in Dallas. They used to do, hopefully they still do them, but like Midnight Movie Madness, I think is what they call them. Yeah. Midnight films they do special screenings of. And they were screening Jaws, the Steven Spielberg movie, and I don't think I even needed to add that in there when I was fucking did Jaws. Who did that again?
Who does that Jaws picture again?
Yeah.
Was that Star Wars fellow?
It was known with my brother and I that my mom went to go see that film whenever it originally came out and was absolutely fucking terrified of it. Like, she, was like scared to take like a bath, after, like hook, line, and sinker. She fell for like the fear factor in it. And so my brother and I, we saw that they're screening, doing a midnight showing of this film, and on Mother's Day weekend, no less. So we told our mom, who like does not like horror movies. I actually think she can watch them like now, but at the time she absolutely could not. And we were just like, we got something special planned for you. You just got to stay up, blindly follow us pretty much. And we took her out to like IHOP to go get some food, but we pumped her full of coffee. We were just like, you're going to have to stay up. We're taking you to a movie
you
at
have
midnight.
To stay awake through
You
Jaws.
have to stay. Which she didn't know what she was seeing. She had no idea. Like we wouldn't tell her that much. And, we're pulling up to the theater, and on the marquee is just big Jaws, and she starts freaking out. Like, she's laughing and having a good time with it, but she's just like, oh my god, like, why are you guys doing this to me?
Y'all have tricked me into this horrible.
Yeah, and I feel bad for my brother because we just filed into the theater like naturally, and it should have been like my brother on one side and our mom in the middle and me on the other side, but it was my mom, my brother, and me, and she jumped at everything and like would grab my brother's arm like anytime something would happen. It would scare the shit out of him because he wasn't expecting someone to grab him. But no, it was a great experience. She had a good time and laughed her way through it.
Yeah, that's one that's worth staying awake through to get. I think Jaws is pretty iconic. Just, obviously it's just one of those movies, you just know it. And I think probably for a lot of people of my generation and, our generation, like, it's one of those movies that was well before our time, but was just still very much word of mouth. It's just one of those things, like, it's always consistently talked about. And yeah, I remember seeing that on VHS when I was a kid and just scared the shit out of me. Like, and that's a pretty universal reaction. A lot of people who saw that film everyone when they were young were like, yeah, no, I couldn't take baths after that, or
yeah,
you don't want to go to the beach. Like after you...
Well, what's amazing about like theaters, especially like the Alamo Drafthouse, which they've blown up, and rightfully so, because they do so much good for film. Several years back, I don't know if this is a tradition or it was just a one-off thing, but some lake near Austin, they did a screening like over the lake of Jaws, and people, you weren't sitting in chairs, you were on like inner tubes, like in the lake, on the water
while the movie plays.
Yeah, and
they're doing that again. Actually,
are you serious? Oh, I would love to see that, because I mean that's like there's not a shark in the lake, but you're floating in this.
It's like
water.
The most.
Oh my god!
Visceral, probably way to watch that movie.
Oh my god! I think I would be scared shitless.
That would be like if you go to see like Altered States inside a fucking deprivation tank.
Yes, VR, just like on
No, yeah, that's awesome, and that's a movie that's pretty. It's a universal classic for good reason, and that's one I haven't seen that one in the theater, but I would be more than down to see it. I actually just watched that again. I watched it a lot when I was a kid, but I just watched it again recently on tape. And it holds up so well. I mean, it's a great movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
But speaking of movie theaters in Texas, we both had some experience in that area. You brought up the fact I did spend some time in Georgia after, my family moved to Georgia, and I was maybe like 11 to 13, somewhere in that area. And, grew up, and there was these theaters that I would maybe like read about or see in the newspaper, or I would find online, and I wanted to check them out. But I was like younger and I didn't have a car. Atlanta from there is like 40 minutes or so, or maybe like an hour or so, and it's not so easy to get out for these late night sort of like midnight movies. But I was lucky enough to have friends and family who were either interested or would just help me get out, because I knew I was so into it. And growing up in Georgia, it did have there was that was like the prime influence of film probably on my life. That was where I got into movies, because when we first got cable, like I was talking about earlier, I would see like House of a Thousand Corpses commercials on TV, like, oh, I wouldn't see anything like that on like NBC. Too hot for network TV. But like you would see that, and then the movie, I hate to say it now, but the movie that got me into movies was like I watched Platoon, Oliver Stone, edited on like UPN. Yeah. Oh, UPN.
Good old UPN. UPN showed like some good movies. I saw 976 Evil on UPN.
Oh, really? Yeah. There you go. UPN. Man.
UPN. I hope
putting people in touch.
Yeah. But anyways, Platoon. Yeah.
But Platoon, yeah. So seeing that, that's how I got into movies, was living in Georgia. It was hard for me to get out to these movie theaters where I wanted to see movies, but once I did start getting out and doing that, it wasn't like life-changing, because I was already really into movies, but it kind of helped mold that sort of experience of going to movies for me. And for a while there, going to the movie theater was like this sort of like weird, almost like religious experience or something, where it was like very serious, and it was like, oh, I'm so stoked. And this is like so like kind of geeky to admit, but I remember just being like so stoked to be in the movie theater. I'd be like almost like shaking before the movie, just be like, fuck yeah, it's time.
Well, it's like an event, man.
Yeah.
In that situation.
The event is, it makes it for you. It's so fun. And like, I've talked about them a couple times before in a couple of the other podcasts, and I'm always down to talk about them. The Plaza Theater, when Johnny and Gail Ray owned it for quite a while, that was like my haven. That was like the place to go to see movies, because it was not too far from Little Five Points, which is, like that's like the little cool area, like around Ponce de Leon and stuff. And the Plaza was just amazing, and the Rays were amazing too. That's why the theater was amazing. They had great programming. They gave people the strength to do what they wanted and play sort of cult classics. They had monthly series that were great, like Taboo La La, the Silver Scream Spook Show, which I've talked about before on the show, which has just come back recently in the last few years. And I saw so many movies. The first movie I ever saw at the Plaza was Persepolis, this animated film. And I think we saw it in the upstairs theater, because it's a huge downstairs room, and then there's a tiny little upstairs room, and they're like connected by this small staircase. But Persepolis was the first film I saw there. The last film I saw there before I moved to Washington was Nasty Baby in 2015, and that was okay. But I saw so many great movies there. Like I saw, I was almost always there with my friends. So I went and saw Eraserhead a print of that, which came directly from David Lynch's like household.
Nice.
Like the print came from David Lynch. Saw Boogie Nights there, and I remember my dad was waiting for me to come out of the movie theater, and there was a chick holding a giant inflatable rubber cock like right outside the door to come out of the theater, and as you're coming out of the screening, she was saying, "Rub the head for good luck." And so my dad's standing there, and I came out and I like rubbed the head, and I was like, "What's up, Dad?" And and I would see like those films, but then I would see like Kurosawa. I saw that there after the other guy took the theater over after the raise, and he showed some pretty cool like smaller independent films like Blue Ruin and The Duke of Burgundy. Like I saw Buzzard there, which was pretty excellent. One of my favorite movies. I saw JCVD there with my dad.
Nice. I still haven't seen that.
It's excellent. So the Plaza was just a formative influence. And you talked about Return of the Living Dead. I saw one screening that really stands out to me. They had a double feature. They had this really beaten up print of Night of the Living Dead that you could tell played like a million road shows or something, and it had just been around since like 67 or whatever, whenever that movie came out. You could tell that it was weathered from travel.
Frames missing and just...
It wasn't even framed. It was just so like there was so many scratches in it that like some of the action on screen was almost unidentifiable at times. So you just would have had to have seen the movie to kind of know what was going on at points, and it was just so ugly. But it was, even when you see an ugly film print, it's so beautiful up there. I love seeing movies on film, and they were a big advocate of that. And that was great. And one thing that was kind of lame, there weren't so many people for Night of the Living Dead. I think there was like maybe 10 people. And I was like, what? This is a classic. Nobody wants to see this movie on film. The movie ended, and I went and rolled up a little number, smoked outside, and I came back in for the second half of the double feature, which was Return of the Living Dead, which you talked about earlier. It was a packed house. I had to like find my way to a seat and sandwich myself between people really close to the screen because it was packed in there, and it was just amazing. Like we talked about, that's a popular film, but it is a huge crowd pleaser. Like there's just some movies like that, or Evil Dead 2. You see them with a crowd and they play terrifically. So the Plaza was definitely a big influence on me for sure. There were other theaters like the Midtown Art, which is still doing really great programming. They have a classic film series, so I wouldn't just go out and see like horror movies or more modern films. I was going to the Midtown and I would see, I saw 3 of Godard's films there, Breathless, Contempt, Alphaville. I went and saw Nashville, the Robert Altman film, around my birthday. I saw Kurosawa's Ran on my birthday.
Nice.
We saw this print of Cassavetes, Woman Under the Influence, and just like Night of the Living Dead, you could tell it was weathered. It had been around, this print. And the print of Woman Under the Influence, I'll never forget. They were playing the film, and there's this scene where Gina Rowlands is like arguing with her husband or whatever, and this guy comes over to the house and he's supposed to give her the shot. We're going to take you to the hospital. And she's like, no, you can't. And it's just like this very intense psychological, emotional moment. And the fucking film looked like it was about to like burn off the sprockets or something. Like there were these weird little like irises and like little crosses and stuff coming. It was like these like not normal film scratches. It looked like the film was going to implode from how dramatic everything was. And I was like, this is beautiful, man.
That's just like such a happy coincidence that happened. You're not gonna get that with digital at all. I hope that print's still floating around. That sounds
yeah, definitely lent to the film for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious because I have a couple, I don't know if you've had this experience, but films that you've gone and seen that just didn't play well to the crowd, or just like there was like some sort of like negative reaction. Because 2 specific ones that come to mind, I went to go see Jodorowsky's Holy Mountain at the Angelica in Dallas.
Great movie.
And it was so funny. Yeah, a fantastic film. And there was some Harry Potter like movie like being like unleashed on the world that same night.
Yeah. And
the Angelica is like 2 stories. There was a line like fucking like to the door, all winding down the staircase for all these people seeing this like Harry Potter film. But like there weren't like a whole lot of people lined up to see the Holy Mountain. I was just like, oh my god, if all of you just came to see this fucking film. Yeah. But at any rate, we were in there. And there are some like that movie's like filled with like a lot of absurdities, and people were just almost like roaring in laughter like during certain parts, and that kind of like turned me off in a way. Yeah. I had seen it before, but I was just like, man, okay, I get that it's like there's, you know, the fucking...
It's really abrasive, but there's like a sort of distanciation that they put there that's like kind of unpleasant.
Totally. Like the, you know, the scene with the old guy with a fucking tiger is like a breast, he's squirting milk. Yeah, you know, like that's like insane, but like, you know, and then like laugh out loud per se, but you know, whatever. However you're experiencing the film. But the kicker was at the end. I'm talking to some friends that we just like happen to meet up at, or they just happen to go to that screening as well. And there's these fucking annoying early 20-something-year-olds like behind us, and one of them says, that movie was just like every film I saw my first year of film class. And I just was like, oh my God.
What was that guy watching in his film class?
Nothing like the Holy Mountain. He just wanted to sound elevated.
They were actually only showing El Topo and Santa Sangre.
It was exclusive. And yeah, I was just, oh my God, I couldn't get out of the theater fast enough. I was just so turned off by the audience's reaction there. And then likewise, right after Mar and I went to go to the Housecore Horror Film Festival, it was a perfect fucking Halloween that year, because then right after that, in Dallas at the Bass Symphony Hall, which is an amazing music hall, Philip Glass was doing a live scoring of Dracula, and he had this like very tight, small ensemble, and people would not like. And the Bass Symphony Hall is like, you go there dressed up, you know. It's like I don't know if they have a dress code, they probably do, but you know, like it's fucking, you go, it's the symphony, and he was playing there. They were projecting the film while he was playing. He was scoring the film. And people would not shut up chatting and talking, but then they were just like laughing at the film, where, you know, the bat flies on screen and it's obviously this rubber prop bat, you know, it's like and
then you get like the clap, oh, it's so corny.
Oh yes, exactly. You have all these people. I'm just like, how are us in our mid-20s more cultured than you fucking, like, you know, 50, 60-year-olds who should know better? Like, we're here to see Philip Glass, you know, like perform, and it's just like, it's perfect that it's Halloween and he's like doing this tour with Dracula, but yeah, people just like ruined it. And it was to the point where like their laughter and chatter was just like going over, like, you drowned out his music, and like I just felt so bad. I was just like, this, like, Philip Glass has just got to think so poorly of this audience, because and Dallas, because they won't shut the fuck up.
I've talked with a friend of mine about that kind of thing before, and you do get that, like I said, there is that distance the audience puts themselves at, where, like, if you're going to see a movie like Jackass #2, that's a movie the crowd's okay to interact with. They're like, look at what he's doing! Isn't this wild? That's okay, you want that. Like, if you go see an action movie, you want to hear people in the crowd that are like, oh, his bones! Did you hear that? You know, it's brutal. Like, I love stuff like that. But then I have had those experiences. Like, I had a friend who went and saw Clockwork Orange, and I didn't make it out to go see that film that night. And he told me, you wouldn't have had a good time anyway. The crowd sucked. They were, like, laughing at shit that's, like, not even funny. Yeah, sure enough, when I went and saw Clockwork Orange, and once again, this was at the Plaza in Atlanta, I swear there was like somebody who was like cheering on like the Singing in the Rain singing. I'm like, what? What? This is the kind of guy that would like send Kubrick the letter. Like, I'm coming for your family, bud. Even when I went and saw Eraserhead, I loved that screening. I had a great time. There's stuff in that movie that was like terrifying to me, but people thought was hilarious, like the chicken's bleeding anus. And there's somebody like, look at that. It's like, ugh, aren't you repulsed by that? It's just like so nightmarish. This is part of the reason that I say it's good to program transgressive films.
Sure,
because that's when you shut up those people that are there to kind of like, you get people who aren't necessarily there to see a movie. They just kind of like want to shit on something with their friends. Look how funny I am. And it's like, you know, we're not Joel from fucking Mystery Science Theater. You can't treat every movie that way. Sometimes,
for sure,
it can be refreshing sometimes to get caustic people at a movie, because if I like see it like a sort of art film or something and it sucks and I'm not enjoying it, and I hear some of the crowd like, well, this blows, it's like, oh, thank God it's not just me. But then, you know, I don't know, it's like, it can ruin it, because like if a film is so impactful to you and you're just like really caught up, and then you hear somebody like raspberry it, you're just like, God damn it. Have you no humanity?
No, for sure. I think that's how I felt, especially with that Holy Mountain screening.
When I was in middle school, our teacher was showing clips of Metropolis, you know, Fritz Lang. And I remember this kid who was like, this shit is so fake. This is so stupid. Who cares about this corny shit? Why is it this one color? What is this? And he got like kicked out of the class, which is maybe a little snobby. I see that mentality in so many like grown audiences, like adult audiences that are still acting like that kid watching Metropolis. This is so fake. No shit, it's a fucking movie.
Yeah. And I like, you know, a well-placed, well-timed joke like in a room full of people watching a film can go like can be perfect comedic timing.
Yeah, sometimes it can bring the atmosphere like right up.
It's absolutely. But there's always that danger of when they get that laugh, when they get like any sort of sense of approval, they're just gonna go after it even more. Or if they say something and it doesn't land, they're just gonna like keep going until they try to land something. But it's people need to be more mindful at the moving pictures.
Yeah, that's right. If you ever catch either of us in a movie theater, you're sitting there cracking your little jokes, they better be funny. All right?
Make them fucking funny.
All right. You better be funnier than the filmmaker, buddy. That's all we got to say about that. On a positive note, though, talk a little bit more about some other experiences here. Like I said, I talked about the Midtown, the Plaza. There's a couple other theaters. The Terra Theater is where I saw Killer Joe and The Master at. And The Master is probably the film I've seen the most theatrically, but I saw it at the Terra exclusively in 2012 around my birthday when it came out with several people. When it came out, that was like a big like event movie. I was just so into it and I was taking like everybody to go see that movie. Terra was a really cool independent theater and they were nice enough that they gave me all of their like promotional material for The Master.
Oh, sweet.
But so yeah, the movie was going out and they were like, well, you know, I asked them, could I have that poster you have in the window? And they were like, well, we have these giant cardboard standees. Do you want those too? I was like, give them over. So the Terror was really cool, and Killer Joe was a really cool movie to see there. I love that movie. I saw it twice there, and one thing that's cool, I don't know if a lot of people go to see movies more than once in the theater. I enjoy it because aside from just soaking in the film again and kind of maybe once you're familiar with it, you have the themes down, you know what it's trying to say, you kind of comprehend it a little better. Maybe if something goes over your head the first time, you latch onto it a little more if you see it again. Killer Joe was great because the first time I saw it, the crowd was totally in tune with the black comedy. Because it's a really, really dark comedy. And there's like just some really graphic stuff happening in that movie. And it was rated NC-17. So you had to go to like an independent theater to go see it. I went and saw it again. The second time, the crowd was not catching the humor at all. And they were like totally unnerved by the violence and stuff in it. And it was such an excellent turnaround to see that. Because I was like, it's great to see movies. I think a couple times you get an idea of how it plays to crowds. Like after I moved up from Georgia, seen a few movies here in Washington. There's a lot of theaters in Seattle I still want to check out. I've been to the Grand Cinema a couple times. I went and saw Joel Petrakis' new film Relaxer there for the Tacoma Film Festival last year. Cool little kind of hole in the wall theater. Like from the street you almost don't even know it's a theater because it just looks like part of the strip. Went to the Cinerama in Seattle, which was really cool. They were doing a yearly 70mm festival, but they haven't done that for the last couple of years. They would show older films like John Carpenter's The Thing or Lawrence of Arabia, Tobe Hooper's Life Force, all this kind of stuff on 70mm, you know, Apocalypse Now, but then they'd also play newer films like Interstellar, Inherent Vice, The Master, which I said that I saw that movie at the Terra a lot when it came out in 2012. Finally saw it for the first time in its intended format, 70mm at the Cinerama. And it was around my birthday, once again, just like when the movie came out, so that was pretty special to me.
Was there a noticeable difference? I haven't seen 70mm.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, the screen almost looks like it's a little bit wider. But we sat in the middle toward the top, like in the balcony. And if you sit in the middle, it does kind of look like it wraps around like some sort of, like one of those 60s screenings or something. Like when they're pumping up those like roller coaster movies and stuff. So yeah, that was interesting. And you definitely make out all the details really specifically. Like people talk about, you see a film in 70mm, you get a close-up of an actor's face, you can make out like every pore and line. You've never been this close to Joaquin. You might not ever want to again. And I love the Capitol Theater here in Olympia. I've seen a few like newer films, you know, like Raw, The Love Witch, but I really liked seeing Fantastic Planet in 2K there with Sweet Leaf Segundo, once again. That was a pretty excellent little screening because Janus Films was shopping that one around for their Criterion release. Also saw Easy Rider there That was so awesome because I've seen that movie a bunch since I was like younger.
Yeah.
But seeing it theatrically really sealed it as being a true classic to me. Like, and there was this moment that I still laugh when I think about, you know, right at the beginning, the guys come and they're like buying the cocaine and he like tests the cocaine. I think Dennis Hopper tests the cocaine. Like right after he like took the bump, some guy in the bottom of the theater went, "Yeah!" And then it was like perfectly timed because right after he went, "Yeah!" it started playing like The Pusher, Steppenwolf, and I was just like, yeah, here we go, baby, let's hit the road. It was almost like being there in Haight-Ashbury or something with some crowd like, "Come on, Jack, let's motor." But yeah, no, so stuff like that's always cool. And I saw, you know, humorously enough, when I saw Barry Lyndon in 35mm at the Midtown, I didn't find out until after I left, but Owen Wilson was at the screening.
Oh, wow.
I don't know why that's so funny. Owen Wilson watching Barry Lyndon. Wow. But like, yeah, that I really wish I knew he was there because this was like 2015. Early 2015, so Inherent Vice had just like come out not too long ago. If I would have known Owen Wilson was there, I would have been like, "You fucking rocked, man." Freaked him out just like I did Bobcat at All Freaking Night that one year.
Oh, yeah.
But we won't talk about that. Sorry, Bob.
But last year in Port Orchard, Washington, they had a very small film festival. I didn't know what to expect. I only went there because the legendary Joe Bob Briggs was going to be there and screening Basket Case and doing his Joe Bob Briggs movie host thing, introducing the film and interrupting it periodically to tell us facts and just bring the film to life like in a different way. Overall, the film festival, it was earnest but lacking. Most of the films were forgettable. Like I really don't remember any of them. There was a Shia LaBeouf weird documentary like sort of film that was there that surprisingly was the better of all the films that were screened there, but that's not saying much. Yeah, I don't know. I hope they still do it. I hope they keep doing it because I had never been to Port Orchard before then, and it's like a really cool little town, and they have a very small cinema there, but you could tell everybody that was working it just loved film and were all about it, even if the films themselves weren't so great.
What was this theater in Port Orchard?
Man, I don't know if I...
Is that the Dragonfly?
Yes.
The
yeah,
Dragonfly?
it was the Dragonfly.
Yeah, because they played House Sue there, I think a couple of years ago around Halloween.
Did they really?
Yeah. I wanted to make it out for that, but I couldn't make it out there.
Hats off to them. Yeah, they like I said, yeah, they love film. Like that's the Joe Bob Briggs experience was so good for me. I grew up with him with Monster Vision, and my brother and my dad, we used to watch that on when we'd go to his place, and he had cable and we got to watch it on USA. I think maybe the first date I went with my girlfriend on, who I've been with now for a while. We've been together for quite a while now. But we went to the Georgia State University campus where she used to go to school a while back. And they used to have this little sort of screening room in there, and they did a thing called Cinefest, where they would sort of show, you know, little films and older films and stuff. And we went on this, like, date to go see Sanjuro, you know, Kurosawa, and Youth of the Beast by Seijun Suzuki. Not one of my favorite Kurosawa films, but, you know, it was great, like, make-out fodder. But then, you know, Youth of the Beast was the second half of the feature. And like I said, that's the one you stay for, man. I love Youth of the Beast. That's, like, probably my favorite Seijun Suzuki movie. And one of the last things I want to talk about, there's a great place. I haven't been to Georgia in a few years. I hope it's still there. The Starlight 6 drive-in theater snack bar on point. It's like still the 60s there. You can go in and get like, I think like a burger for like $1 or something. And I would load up. Probably from the 60s.
I would say I went to the Starlight 6 maybe like 3 or 4 times, and almost all the movies I saw there sucked. It was just, let's go to the drive-in.
Yeah,
like,
the experience of it.
Yeah, it's its own thing. Like, and it's just such an American tradition and a rare experience, unfortunately, now. But I saw garbage like, you know, like one of the Paranormal Activity sequels and the third Harold and Kumar 3D movie. And it was just like movies I'll never remember a thing about. But one of my all-time favorites, we saw Django Unchained when it came out. And they played it at the drive-in. And it was so eerie because, like, we were hotboxing the fucking car, man. So we were just getting lit up inside the car watching the movie, passing around these dollar cheeseburgers, putting the Whoppers in the popcorn. ripped to the gills, and the fog starts rolling out in front of the screen, dude, because it was a late night show. I think it was like 10 or 11. That's like a 2.5 hour movie.
Yeah.
And so like the fog starts rolling out because it's getting late, and it was fogged out in the car. It was foggy outside the car. There's like mythicism about it in that way, and seeing it like in Atlanta, it was just like this weird singular sort of experience. I was like, man, I can't imagine such an accidentally great way to see a movie. Like,
it's very private because you can be in your car, you can like sit out with some like lawn chairs or something, but it's more at the end of the experience, at least for me, when you realize everybody else is there, because everybody starts up their cars and turn on their headlights, and you're just like, all these people were out there like in the outside, you know, like outdoors, like watching this film. And it's, yeah, if you haven't experienced it, like find your local drive-in if you have one.
There is some sort of, it's like those places maintain some sort of weird supernatural essence where people still act like the past at those places. Like there would be times where I'd be walking to the snack bar and there's like a couple making out just standing on the side of their car, and it's like some 1950s shit. I'm like, what is going on, man?
I am remiss if I don't give full credit. Strong Knotz has talked about film screening group, our old film screening group, Hotel Broslin, which was, I think it ties it together, the feeling that we've talked about with sharing the experience with people. And the name came from Mara, who was a part of the group, referencing Basket Case. Much discussion was had, and like Jonah was talking about how a hotel's made up of like all these different rooms, and you can kind of almost like in The Shining, like, you know, you go through and you see these different like almost vignettes, like there's life happening in all these different rooms, but it's like a community that's operating like independent of each other but also like communally. And I think that's what sold us on that name, and brought a lot of people together over time, because the love of cinema and going out and experiencing that with other people. And I think that's a very special thing that should live on.
You know, you got to keep the tradition going. You know, there's always time. If you have a theater around, find the programmer, talk to them, say, you know, we have this massive screen, can we show VHS on it? Just pester the shit out of them. Keep it alive. That's what we're all about. Sharing the love. We love movies. This has been Video Psychosis. I'm Strong Knotz.
This is Justin.
And this is the end. Stay sick.
Video Psychosis.